Well, let's dive in for today. One of the exercises Josie and I did before we were married, it was part of our premarital counseling, is we had to identify like the best traditions in our families growing up and then sort of name the ones we wanted to bring into our new life together. And the one that was kind of at the top of the list was having family dinners together. We knew we wanted to share our meals together kind of throughout our life. And we've done a pretty good job of this. We've been married for 14 years. Actually, 14 years tomorrow is our anniversary. Yep, excited about that. It's gotten more complicated with kids and their extracurriculars, because there's stuff going on. But I would tell you, most nights of the week, we're having dinner together as a family. And one of the things we do is we often bring a question to the table to sort of fuel our conversation. So sometimes it's actually the homework from the sermon from that week. We talk about that as a family. Sometimes it's something, silly. Our boys love would you rathers, Would you rather have a tiny nose and huge ears or tiny ears and a huge nose, right? Like things like that. They love favorites, like, hey, what's your favorite season or movie or whatever. But by far, the thing we talk about most frequently is what was your high and your low for the day? Your peak and your valley. And, I've noticed this thing recently as we've been discussing our highs and lows. I first noticed this thing in me, but then I start to notice this thing in everybody else, right? So I think this is a thing for all of us. So here's the thing. I've noticed it's a whole lot easier for me to identify my low than it is my high. Like when it comes to my low, the worst part of my day, like I'm ready to share that. Like the person who cut me off in traffic or, the meeting that went way too long or the pistachio shell I couldn't get open, that kind of stuff, right? But the high, that's a lot harder for me to identify. I often have to, reflect for several minutes before I can pinpoint, what that is. And so what I'm noticing is I kind of have this bent towards the negative. It's like there's this gravitational pull for me to notice all the things that are wrong or broken. I have a bent towards the negative rather than all the things that are positive. It's almost like if you were to take a test and you get every question right except for one, I'm going to focus on the one question I got wrong. That wasn't even worded fairly, you know what I mean? So I've noticed I can focus on the one criticism rather than the 10 words of affirmation. I can focus on the one messy interaction rather than all the positive interactions. I fixate on the wrinkle rather than everything else that went smoothly. And I'm learning that this is actually how our brains are wired. So our brains are actually hardwired to constantly be on the lookout for threats and for problems. And then there's this built-in sort of fight or flight response. So when we notice something's wrong or a problem, we either attack it or we run away, which is great for that moment when you encounter a grizzly bear in your backyard, right? But not so helpful when you're encountering the normal everyday challenges of life. Like responding to a nasty email like a grizzly bear running at you rarely goes well. But this is how we're hardwired. Our brains notice all the things that are wrong, all the things that are broken. We have a gravitational pull towards the negative. We notice the warts and the blemishes. We notice the wrinkles, the stains and smudges, all the imperfections in life. And that's as fine as it goes, is just noticing it. But what ends up happening is we can begin to fixate on that. It becomes the primary focus of our attention, the things that are wrong, and all of our best energy goes to try to counter that or protect ourselves from that. And the reason why this is a problem is because if this is where you give your attention has a shaping influence on you. Where you give your time and energy and attention shapes you as a person. So if you give all your time and energy and attention to the things that are wrong and broken, what ends up happening over time is you become incapable of noticing the good things, the beautiful things, the things that are amazing in your life. Over time, what can happen is you become incapable of noticing all the ways that God is freely and wildly and generously pouring out his love and grace on your life. In short, you become incapable of gratitude. Gratitude is this ability to notice and name the good things in your life and give appropriate thanks for it. Gratitude. And gratitude is one of the primary markers of a growing disciple of Jesus. So here's our bottom line for today. If there's one thing you take away, let it be this. Jesus followers are grateful followers. Jesus followers are grateful followers. Again, a primary attribute, a key characteristic of a disciple of Jesus is gratitude. Not entitlement, not discontentment, not negativity or a fixation with all that's wrong or broken, but gratitude. The ability to name and notice the good and give appropriate thanks for it. Gratitude is the attitude of a growing disciple of Jesus. Jesus followers are grateful followers. And that's exactly what we're going to see in our passage for today. So our passage for today is Luke 17, 11 through 19, and here's how it begins. It says, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have pity on us.'" So you need to know leprosy in the ancient world wasn't limited to what we call leprosy today. In Jesus' day, there were all kinds of skin conditions that fell under the umbrella of leprosy. And there are very clear instructions in the Old Testament about what to do with lepers. You can read about it in Leviticus 13. But basically, they were considered unclean, and they would have been separated from the rest of the community. So they had to maintain their distance. They were basically quarantined. It's a little bit like when my kids get sick. You know, my first move isn't to bring them in for a hug or go cuddle on the couch. I'm like, hey, you go stay over there for a couple days. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Like they would separate the person who's sick so nobody else would get it. And notice that these 10 lepers are sort of following the scriptural instructions. They're standing at a distance, so they're honoring the scriptures. And that's why they're shouting out in a loud voice, because there's some distance there. Jesus, Master, have pity on us. And then it says in verse 14, when he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. So several things here. First of all, notice that it says, when he saw them. We've talked about this before, but I'm going to mention it again, that Jesus had this incredible ability to truly see people. He didn't see them based on labels. He didn't categorize people as insiders or outsiders or lepers. He saw people as fearfully and wonderfully made and created in God's image. And so all of his interactions flow from that place. He acknowledges their humanity, their dignity, and the image of God that they bear. I'm telling you, friends, our reputation as a church community would drastically change if we saw people the way Jesus saw people. So he doesn't see lepers or outsiders. He sees human beings created in God's image. And then he says, go show yourselves to the priests. Now, Jesus is living into the instructions in the Old Testament because priests were basically like personal healthcare inspectors. So if someone got sick and then they thought that they were healed or recovered, they'd have to go show themselves to a priest. The priest would then examine them and say, yes, you've been healed or not. If yes, then they would offer sacrifices and they get to go rejoin the community. If not, they were made separate, right? So Jesus is instructing them to go show themselves to the priest. But the most important thing to notice is the order here. Notice it says, as they went, they were healed. So Jesus doesn't heal them and then send them to the priests. He sends them to the priests as if they were already healed, even though they weren't. And this is what connects last week's message to this week's message, because it isn't about giving them more faith. It's about them acting on the instruction, the faith they've already been given. And as they do that, they experience healing. Jesus is putting their faith to the test. And so as they go, they're healed. And it says, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. So we're told that only 1 out of the 10 returns to thank Jesus, and he does so with a loud voice. So I imagine this guy has a voice modulation disorder. Think Cameron Lucas, okay? He only has one volume, and it's loud. Before he was crying out in a loud voice like, hey, Jesus, have mercy on me. And now when he's healed, he's still in a loud voice, like thanking and praising Jesus, doing so very dramatically, throwing himself at Jesus' feet. And then it's like Luke kind of sets us up. Notice this. So we develop this positive impression of this guy. He's thanking and praising Jesus. We get this positive impression of this guy, and then it's revealed, oh, and by the way, he was a Samaritan. And see, there's a little punch to this because Jews looked down on Samaritans. They despised Samaritans. And so Jesus and Luke are sort of challenging this negative stereotype. They're challenging that prejudice. And they're doing it in kind of a bold way because this Samaritan is sort of being held up as an example of what it looks like to rightly respond to Jesus. And in so doing, he's sort of putting the Jewish community to shame because they're not responding that way. And also what's happening is Jesus is making it clear Samaritans aren't outside of the kingdom. They're not outsiders, but they're included in my saving work. It's an incredible verse. And then Jesus asks him, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go, your faith has made you well. So Jesus here makes it clear. He draws attention to the fact that all 10 were cleansed, but only one has returned to give thanks. All 10 experienced the exact same healing, but they respond in a different way. The difference wasn't in the healing. The difference was in their response. They're equally healed, but unequally grateful. And that's where this passage leaves us, sitting in that tension. At the heart of today's passage is an invitation to truly embody the attitude of discipleship, the attitude of someone who follows Jesus. And it's really a continuation of what we began to step into last week. Remember, last week we saw that the attitude of disciples, our attitude as followers of Jesus, meaning our internal disposition, right, our posture towards God, is not to be one of entitlement, but humble service. We don't serve God in order to get God to do things for us, right? It's not a quid pro quo kind of a thing where now I've done this for you, God, so you're indebted to me, and then you do things for me. That would reverse things so that we're ultimately controlling God. Yeah? You guys see how that works? We'd be flipping it. Oh, God, now that I've done that, you owe me. And last week we saw, no, that's not how it works. We're not to be motivated by selfish entitlement, but rather humble service. And today what we're going to see is that what's underneath all of this is gratitude. Gratitude. Like Jesus followers are grateful followers. Gratitude is a primary characteristic of those who follow Jesus. Gratitude is the attitude of someone who's growing closer to Jesus. And one of the primary things that sort of reveals how much gratitude is already in our lives is how we respond to the stuff that's already there. So if you're taking notes, here's point number 1 today. How we respond to what's happening in our lives reveals what's in our hearts. How we respond to what's happening in our lives reveals what's in our hearts. In verse 17, Jesus said, we're not all 10 cleansed. Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Remember, all 10 experience the exact same thing. The exact same thing. They're all cleansed or healed, but only one's grateful. So they all experience the same thing, but they respond differently. And the difference in their response reveals what's in their heart. So for one, he responds with thanksgiving, loudly demonstrative praise and thanksgiving, which indicates he's orienting towards Jesus out of gratitude. But see, for the other 9, they experience the exact same thing, but they don't respond that way. Their lack of thankfulness reveals that they're orienting to Jesus in a different way. There's a lack of gratitude there. And so it is for us. How we respond to the stuff that's in our lives, the everyday stuff, the ordinary stuff, reveals what's in our hearts. James 1:17 says this, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Part of what this verse is driving at is that every good thing in our lives ultimately has its origin in God's generosity toward us. Everything that's good in our lives ultimately comes from God. And so when we notice good things in our lives and respond with thanksgiving and praise, it indicates we're orienting towards God with gratitude in our hearts. But when we respond to anything that's good in our lives with less than that, it reveals that we're orienting towards God out of something else, some other place. And usually that place is entitlement. We feel entitled. And nothing, this is so important, nothing will squeeze gratitude out of your life like entitlement. Entitlement and gratitude are antithetical to one another. They cannot coexist simultaneously in your life. They're opposites. You can't be entitled and grateful at the same time. It's impossible. You can't be discontent, and thankful at the same time. It doesn't work. And so part of us growing in gratitude means we need to wake up to the entitlement and all the stuff we take for granted in our everyday lives. So I came across this really important tweet recently. It's from a guy named Mac McCarthy. I don't know who he is, but he just nails this. He says this: "We take it for granted today, but a single Dorito has more extreme nacho flavor than a peasant in the 1400s would get in his whole lifetime." Do I need to read that again? Okay. So we take this for granted today. A single Dorito has more extreme nacho flavor than a peasant in the 1400s would get in his whole lifetime. Yeah? Right. So we take all kinds of stuff for granted. And one of the things we take for granted is food. We do. So I was having this conversation with my two older boys recently, 9 and 7. And I started to go, man, do you realize all the different kinds of food you've experienced in your short little lifetimes? Like you've had Thai food, Indian food, Chinese food. You love sushi. There's Mediterranean, Italian, Mexican. You've tried all these different varieties of food in like 9. That's incredible. That's incredible. Most kids around the world eat rice and beans, and they're lucky if they get some protein, you know? And then, yet we kind of complain, maybe you've done this, like, oh man, I don't know where to go out to eat because Oconomowoc has no choices. Have you ever done this? Yeah? Yeah. Meanwhile, we take for granted the fact that we even get to go out to eat. You know what I mean? Here in the United States, we like suffer from heart disease, but around the world, it's hunger, right? We take food for granted. My favorite treat is coffee ice cream with a little bit of Heath on top. Oh, it's so good. And whenever I'm eating coffee ice cream with a little bit of Heath on top, I usually have this moment where I'm like, Jesus, you're missing out, man. You know what I mean? Because your diet was basically just fish and bread with maybe some salt, you know? You didn't get to experience this, and it's delicious. Jesus didn't have extreme nacho flavor, right? He didn't. He didn't have coffee ice cream with little bits of Heath on top. We take food for granted. Another area I think we take things for granted is technology. We take technology for granted. And if you don't believe me, just pay attention to what happens next time some technology you rely on stops working. We lose our minds. I mean, pay attention to what happens next time your car won't start, or your phone starts to glitch on you, or your computer crashes. We lose it. Case in point, this was several years ago. Josie and I were hanging out with another couple, and we decided to watch a movie. And this was before we streamed everything, so we actually had a Blu-ray player, right? And we're watching this movie, and we get to the scene where like every tension point in the movie culminates in this. Like everything's gonna be resolved in this one scene, and just as the scene starts, it freezes. You'd think we'd respond like mature, emotionally stable adults. We did not. I mean, we lost it. It started with a whine and a complaint, like, you've got to be kidding me. But it quickly escalated. And it got to the point where like things are boiling over, and the person who's hosting us is like freaking out because it's their Blu-ray player. And at one point, he's feeling the pressure and all the angst, and he goes, do you think I can just climb into this Blu-ray player? I can't climb into the Blu-ray player. And I'm sitting there like, we have lost our minds in this moment because this technology is glitching on us, and we feel entitled to know how this movie resolves itself. We take technology for granted. We take food for granted. We take our health for granted. Let me ask you this. Is anyone else like a wuss when it comes to getting sick? Oh, put your hands up. Yeah. So I'm like that person when I get a cold, I think I'm dying, right? And I let the world know, like, this could be it. This could be it. I'm on my way out. And I start whining and complaining and acting like, it's the end of the world. And it never goes well because my wife is a nurse in the ICU. So she actually works with people who are dying. So she'll look at you and be like, you're not dying. Toughen up. No compassion, no sympathy. It's miserable. Yeah, it's not good. But this is how we are. Like, we take our health for granted, and it's not until something stops working, like something in our body stops working the way it's supposed to, that we realize, oh man, that's important. So about a year ago, I got really sick, and then I preached through the weekend, and I did something to my voice, like I strained my voice. And ever since then, my voice has been like a little bit wonky, and it will like give out on me. So for the last year, I've just been really grateful when my voice is working properly. I never would have noticed that before, About halfway through this year, maybe because of some of the stress, I developed like this little eye twitch in my left eye, So no one else would notice it because I'm just standing there and you're talking to me like normal, but it feels like Cameron's pet tarantula is like on my eye the whole time. You feel like you're going crazy. It's just fluttering. And it's resolved itself, but I can't tell you how often I was like, man, I'm so grateful for it to have normal working eyeballs. This is fantastic. About a year ago, I injured my lower back. I have a disc bulge in my L4, L5. And I very quickly became aware of all the things. Like, I have spent my entire life punishing my body, like doing whatever I want athletically. And so this has been a huge wake-up call to go, man, there's so many things I enjoy doing that I can't do now that have increasing gratitude for, This is how it works. Like, we take our bodies for granted, and it's not until something stops working the way it's supposed to that we realize how important that is. One final one that I want to touch on is our relationships. We take our relationships for granted, the people around us that are like closest to us. Back in May, Josie took a weekend trip, a girls' weekend away to Chicago, and I was really glad she was able to do that. But let me tell you, I quickly realized how much I take for granted, like being able to work as a team with her, because I had like 6 soccer games, 3 boys, nights weren't as fun once they're in bed. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, it wasn't as fun, right? And all of a sudden you start to realize, man, how much I appreciate Josie. There's that phrase, absence makes the heart grow fonder, something like that. And it's true. It's not until the people who are closest to us, like we get some distance where you realize how much they matter. In general, our posture is to take that for granted. You guys get the point. We could keep going. And name all these things all these good things we sort of gloss over in our lives and don't give appropriate thanks for. We take it for granted. We feel entitled. And this makes us miserable, honestly. It robs us from joy. Instead of noticing the good and finding fulfillment right there in front of us, it makes us miserable. Entitlement squeezes out the joy in our lives, which means if we're going to become more like Jesus and be anchored in gratitude, one of the things we need to do is push back against entitlement. And the way to do that is simply to practice gratitude on a regular basis. And here's the thing, I studied this a ton for this week, and I'm not even going to be able to give you all the stuff that I discovered. But basically, science is now waking up to the importance of gratitude. Scientific research is now showing all the amazing benefits of simply living a grateful life. Friends, I'm telling you right now, if you could take like a magic pill that would improve every area of your life, that pill would be labeled gratitude. It's like the thing that improves everything. So point number 2 today, if you're taking notes, is this. Gratitude is the secret sauce to a fulfilling life. It's a secret sauce. You want to live a fulfilling life? It's about moving toward gratitude. Let me frame this, though, because I've been talking to some people recently, and I've realized, man, your primary way for making decisions is what will make you happy. It's like you're chasing your own happiness. And I've realized this is a really poor way to go about, making decisions in life. For one, some of the things I think will make me happy in life don't, like McDonald's, right? It's not going to make you happy. It's going to make you miserable. So, and the other thing is that's a really selfish way to live, to make your happiness the center of all your choices. Like pursuing happiness isn't what we're supposed to do as followers. We're supposed to chase one thing, and that's Jesus. That's what we're supposed to be pursuing. And when we do that, you'll find fulfillment. And closely associated with that is gratitude. So gratitude is like this natural byproduct of following Jesus wholeheartedly. And science now is catching up to this. There's been dozens of studies over the last several decades that basically show that gratitude will improve every area of your life. It will improve your physical well-being. It will lower your blood pressure. You'll get sick less often. It will improve your emotional well-being. You'll have less toxic emotions and be more positive and optimistic. It will improve your relationships. It will improve everything. One study concludes this: our research has shown that gratitude can improve general well-being, increase resilience, strengthen social relationships, and reduce stress and depression. The more grateful people are, the greater their overall well-being and life satisfaction. They also have stronger immune systems, lower blood pressure, and are better at sleeping. They are more generous, more compassionate, and happier. Grateful people also have a greater capacity for joy and positive emotions. The leading researcher on gratitude is this guy named Robert Emmons. He's a professor at the University of California, and he's done tons and tons of studies on this, and he's consolidated all of his findings to basically say practicing gratitude guaranteed will do 7 things for you. I'm going to go over these with you. Number 1, it will open you up to new relationships. So those who show appreciation to others, which is a form of gratitude, develop more friendships with other people. And it's not just the volume of friendships you'll experience, but there will be a deeper level of friendship there. So it opens you up to new and deeper relationships. Secondly, gratitude improves our physical health. Grateful people experience fewer aches and pains. They exercise more frequently. It will lower your blood pressure. So many physical benefits to just practicing gratitude. Thirdly, it improves our psychological health. So it reduces toxic emotions like envy and jealousy, bitterness, and resentment. Fourthly, it increases empathy and reduces aggression. So it leads to all kinds of pro-social kind of behavior when you're anchored in gratitude. Fifth, it helps you sleep better. There's a study done where people wrote down 3 things they're grateful for before they went to sleep, and they found that those people sleep deeper and longer. It improved their sleep. 6, it improves our self-esteem. There's a study done in 2014 with student athletes, and what they found is that athletes who practiced gratitude had greater confidence and performed better in their sport. And then lastly, number 7, is it reduces stress and it helps people overcome trauma or challenges in their lives. So there's a 2006 study done where they looked at Vietnam vets, and they found that those who increased their gratitude lowered their experience of PTSD. Tons and tons and tons of study. One study he did, you guys, he took 3 groups of people, and they all had to do the same thing. For 10 consecutive weeks, they had to journal. 10 consecutive weeks, they had to journal 1 time per week. But what they journaled about was different. So the first group had to journal about things they were grateful for. They had to identify positive things in their life and then write down those things once a week with as much detail as possible. The second group focused on neutral things. So things that were neither positive or negative, they had to identify neutral things from their week and journal about those. And then the last group had to journal about their hassles, the things that annoyed them or frustrated them. Write down as much detail as possible. At the end of this 10 weeks, the results were incredible. They found that the group that focused on neutral things, there was no substantial change in any direction. They remained the same. The group that wrote down positive things were so much happier with their life and optimistic. And the group that wrote down negative things were miserable. At the end of this study, he concludes participants in the gratitude condition felt better about their lives as a whole and were optimistic about the future than participants in either of the other control conditions. To put it into numbers, according to the scale we use to calculate well-being, they were a full 25% happier than all of the other participants. So, friends, here's what we're after, is this is part of what it means to follow Jesus. Becoming increasingly grateful, noticing and naming the good things that are in your life, and responding with praise and thanksgiving. Gratitude is the attitude of a growing disciple of Jesus. But not only that, science is now catching up to this reality, and there's like dozens and dozens of benefits of simply living into what the Bible invites us to do in the first place. So, as we wrap up here today, I want to give you your homework. Perhaps you already know how to respond, but if not, this will be helpful to you. And we're not going to just think about gratitude this week. We're going to actually practice it. So, 2 ideas for you. Number 1, keep a gratitude log this week. So every day, write down 3 things that you're grateful for each day and thank God for each of them. And do this with as much detail as you can. You've got to actually write it down. You can't just think about it. You got to actually write it down and do it as in much detail as you can. There's a correlation between depth of detail and depth of gratitude. And if you really want to make this a habit, do it for 21 days, okay? Secondly, is write a thank you letter. There's an interesting study done on gratitude and writing thank you letters. So write a thank you letter this week. Identify someone who has made a difference in your life and write that person a thank you letter. Not only will it improve your well-being, but you'll be able to fill someone else's bucket this week. Yeah? Yeah? All right, sounds good. Let's stand for closing prayer. Well, Jesus, we want to acknowledge that we often gloss over all the good things, the amazing things, the beautiful things that are right in front of us. So would you help open our eyes to all the things that you're lavishing on us because of your love? We want to be a grateful people. God, we want to be a people who embody your generosity in the world. And so help us to serve as your hands and feet this week from a posture of humble service and from grateful hearts. We ask this in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen, and go in his name.